and arrest. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. I want to start by thanking our witnesses for appearing before the committee today. Today's hearing provides the American people the ability to hear directly from the leaders that enforce our nation's immigration laws. It is our imperative as representatives of the people to be a voice for the people. Transparency, communication, and accountability are keys to good government. This is why oversight is important. Informing Congress and the public is not casting accusations, nor is it a punishment. Congress has a duty to hear directly from the executive branch, a duty I take seriously. And the executive branch has a duty to keep us informed. While this hearing was long planned, we sit here today at an inflection point, an opportunity to assess and reinforce the integrity of immigration enforcement and to strengthen public trust. An opportunity to emphasize and underscore the Department of Homeland Security's no-fail mission as a whole. My top priority as chairman is, and will always be, protecting America while ensuring the safety of law enforcement. This is further important in the context of another potential shutdown of the department. Let me be clear. Shutting down DHS makes America less safe and negatively impacts thousands of federal employees like those at TSA and CISA. The Department of Homeland Security is the nation's largest federal law enforcement agency. It is this committee's duty, regardless of administration, to conduct oversight. We need to examine how DHS components are enforcing the law and ensure they have the resources in place to do work safely, effectively, and properly. Last year, we provided historic resources through reconciliation to strengthen public safety and support for the Trump administration's unprecedented efforts to secure the border. This was the single largest investment in the domestic Homeland Security mission. To succeed, we all need to work together seamlessly, and this committee is a partner in that effort. It is important to remember how we got here. For years, we witnessed a blanket refusal to enforce the law, wide open borders, catch and release policies, and uncontrolled mass migration. These policies undermined the rule of law and endangered all Americans. Enforcing immigration law is not optional. The Trump administration's record on border security is irrefutable. Nationwide border encounters last December decreased 91% compared to 2023. Apprehensions between ports of entry last December decreased 86% compared to 2024. And we ended last year with 8 consecutive months of 0 parole releases by Border Patrol. Further, thousands of criminal illegal aliens have been detained and deported. These actions make America safer and more secure. But the credibility of these successes is on the line. We must take the temperature down and look at the record of enforcement actions through rational eyes. We've seen a significant increase in violent rhetoric and agitation. We've seen a significant increase in attacks on federal law enforcement and in the number of threats facing them and their families. This committee highlighted the threat increases to law enforcement at an earlier hearing. We have seen state and local jurisdictions refuse to protect federal law enforcement officers. And obviously, we have now seen the deaths of 2 American citizens in Minnesota. This is all unacceptable and preventable. The safety of law enforcement and the communities they serve and protect must always come first. When officials or elected leaders rush to conclusions about law enforcement or their fellow Americans, public trust suffers. There must be complete and impartial investigation. I expect each of our witnesses to keep this committee fully informed as the investigations run their course, and I will ensure this happens. While these investigations are ongoing, officials and elected leaders cannot rush to judgment. I cannot put myself in the shoes of law enforcement, nor can I imagine what the families of Ms. Good and Mr. Preddy are enduring today. Public trust and public safety go hand in hand. We cannot have one without the other. I am encouraged to see that President Trump sent Border Czar Tom Homan and Commissioner Scott to Minnesota to work with Governor Walz, Mayor Frey, and other local leaders. I sincerely hope this dialogue continues. This should stand as an example of cooperation to anyone who continues to incentivize reckless behavior in our streets, unlawfully impede law enforcement operations, or disparage their fellow citizens. State and local officials should be partners, not obstacles when it comes to public safety. And federal officials should keep in mind that this kind of partnership is a two-way street. Everyone should have the same goal of keeping America safe. Transparency and communication are needed now more than ever. the department's no-fail mission hangs in the balance. A rule-based order is not one-sided. Enforcing immigration law and defending all Americans' constitutional rights, including the rights to peacefully protest, bear arms, and privacy, are not mutually exclusive. I want to thank Secretary Noem for making these witnesses rapidly available, and again, thank the three of you for being here today. As Border Czar Homan recently said, you can't fix problems if you don't have discussions. I hope we can have a positive, civil, and productive discussion today. Only together can we make our community stronger and the homeland safer for the future of all Americans. I now recognize the ranking member, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for his opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Good morning to all of you who are here. Thank you for calling this hearing today. This important hearing has drawn a great deal of interest and attention, and many of my colleagues who represent the border city of El Paso and who have been leader on border security, Veronica Escobar, has joined us today and would like to ask questions of our witnesses. So, Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Escobar, be permitted to sit with the committee and question today's witnesses as we have afforded that to other individuals in past hearings.
Well, I thank the gentlewoman for their interest in today's important hearing. As I previously informed both the majority and minority, committee will not be entertaining off-committee member requests. Therefore, I object.
Well, your objection is noted, Mr. Chairman, but I would, for the record, want to say that it's highly unusual that a member of Congress sitting with as much impact on immigration as her area is not afforded that courtesy. But you're the chairman, and that's your prerogative, as if it would be anyone else's.
As the ranking member knows, we had many requests. This is a very important hearing. It is my duty to keep the wheels on this hearing and get actual answers on the record. I thank the gentlelady's interest. We had a lot of members who were interested in being here today, which is why we thought it would be best just to keep it for members of the committee. These gentlemen have repeatedly testified before many committees at the Capitol, and I'm sure other members will get the opportunity to do the same questioning. This is the Committee on Homeland Security. We had previously said we would not waive on members specifically for this hearing, and we're going to stick by that rule today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. May I say to Ms. Escobar, if there are questions you would like to have asked of these witnesses, if you will provide those questions to me or any other member of the committee, we'll be more than happy to transmit them. Thank you so much. I hope my Republican colleagues will remember that our job is to conduct oversight, not cover for Donald Trump and his out-of-control administration, which is running roughshod over Americans' rights, killing U.S. citizens and threatening our very democracy. The disease rotting the Trump administration from the inside out started at the top and has infected every part of the executive branch. Nowhere is that more evident than at the Department of Homeland Security. This hearing is just the start of a reckoning for the Trump administration and its weaponization of DHS against American citizens and the principle our country stands for. DHS, led by Secretary Kristi Noem, must be held accountable for its lawlessness immigration operation. They are reckless, creating chaos in our communities, terrorizing adults and children alike, and undermining our moral authority as a nation of liberty and rule of law. Last month, an ICE agent shot and killed Renee Good, a Minneapolis mom, in cold blood as she drove away from him. After killing her, the agent called her a disgusting name I won't repeat here. Other agents refused to allow a nearby physician to treat her. Democrats called for accountability. Instead, Secretary Noem blamed the victim, Ms. Good, and attempted to gaslight Americans with false claims that Ms. Good was a domestic terrorist. Renee Good was nothing of the sort. She was a mom, a wife, a neighbor, and an American citizen who did not deserve to die at the hands of her own government. She should be alive today. Ever since, the Trump administration has devoted the full resources of the federal government to blocking a legitimate investigation into Ms. Good's killing. If that isn't a sign of guilt, I don't know what is. Federal prosecutors had a warrant to collect evidence from Ms. Good's vehicle for a civil rights investigation into ICE's use of force, but FBI Director Kash Patel and other Trump administration officials demanded they drop it. Career prosecutors, duly bound to the rule of law, not the political prerogatives of the White House, resigned in protest. Blocking an investigation into the government's use of force against one of its own citizens is a self-dictatorship, not democracies. Every American should be outraged. Democrats tried to get answers in the aftermath of Ms. Good's shooting. We called on Acting Director Todd Lyons to testify at the committee's hearing 3 weeks ago. Unfortunately, he turned down the committee's invitation. This is part of a pattern of the Trump administration's refusal to comply with regular congressional oversight. Committee Democrats have sent multiple letters to ICE and CBP on critical issues, but most of them, 10, have gone unanswered. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to include all 10 of these letters into the record.
Without objection.
ICE has blocked members of Congress from visiting its detention facilities, even after reports of horrific conditions, detainee abuse, and a detainee being murdered in a DHS facility. I was one of those individuals who parted to a lawsuit to try to get ICE to just follow the law that says members of Congress can visit ICE facilities and present themselves at any time. So I understand that it's still being litigated, but I've been given authority to go, and I plan to do it this week just to test ICE's adherence to the law. Mr. Lyons is here today, nearly a month after we invited him. I guess DHS needed time to get his story straight before he came to testify under oath. Fearing more violence from federal law enforcement, Democrats have also called on DHS to rein in immigration agents and their brutal attacks on Americans immediately following Ms. Good's murder. But DHS ignored our pleas. Instead, Greg Vino, who styled himself in Nazi attire and takes joy in deploying tear gas at Americans, continued to roam around Minneapolis with his mass gang, terrorizing people and violating their constitutional rights. And tragically, our worst fears were realized. Just days after the hearing, Mr. Lyons refused to participate in. CBP personnel shot Alex Preety, and he was face down on Minneapolis' sidewalk, killing him in broad daylight. In the video of the incident, a DHS agent can be seen cheering Mr. Preety's death. Americans watched the video in horror. Yet once again, Secretary Noem gaslit the public, made up a demonstrably false story about Mr. Preety and blamed the victim for his own death. Mr. Preety was a law-abiding U.S. citizen and a VA nurse who dedicated his career to caring for our veterans. Mr. Chairman, at our last month hearing, I asked for a moment of silence in the memory of Renee Good. Today, with great sadness about another American killed at the hands of DHS, I ask that the committee observe a moment of silence in honor of Alex Preedy. Thank you. The slaying of Ms. Good and Mr. Preedy by DHS are the most tragic examples of what is wrong with Trump's DHS, but far from the only ones. Last fall, a Border Patrol agent shot Miramar Martinez, a U.S. citizen and preschool teacher from Chicago, 5 times. The agent bragged in text messages about shooting her, saying, quote, "I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes." But that in your book, boys. Again, the Trump administration tried to blame Ms. Martinez, the victim, but prosecutors dropped charges against her when it became apparent that the evidence contradicted the Border Patrol's phony account. Unlike Ms. Good's and Mr. Preedy's, we can no longer tell their stories. Ms. Martinez has shared her story about what Trump's DHS did to her. I want to play a bit of the video here because people need to see what ICE and CBP are doing to Americans.
So this is the first one I realized. I was like, oh, it's just a pepper pellet, but no. And then I got shot right here. And then I have a wound on the side of my chest right here. And then I got 2 holes in my thigh. And then right here.
Wow.
Right here.
Wow.
What happened to Ms. Martinez, Ms. Good, and Mr. Preedy is a scourge on this country and shameful chapter in our nation's history, but tragically, there's more. DHS agents recently used a 5-year-old Ecuadorian boy, Lehman Ramos, as bait to lure his family members outside their home to arrest them. The family had entered the country legally as asylum seekers and were living in Minnesota while awaiting their immigration proceedings. DHS sent the little boy and his father to detention in Texas for over a week. Thankfully, a judge ordered him released, slamming DHS for its, and I quote, incompetently implemented deportation campaign. Incompetently implemented deportation campaign is putting it nicely, especially as it relates to small children. More apt in the Bible, quote from John 11, chapter 35th, referenced at the end of the judge's opinion, Jesus wept. DHS personnel are now forcing their way into private homes without a judicial warrant in violation of the Fourth Amendment. In one recent incident, ICE dragged a U.S. citizen from his home at gunpoint in underwear before realizing they had picked up the wrong person. The person ICE was actually looking for was sitting in jail in Minnesota. The Minnesota Department of Corrections says that ICE had this information all along. Bystander videos from Minneapolis and cities around the country show ICE and CBP personnel behaving like unprofessional goons, cursing at bystanders and mooning people from their hotel rooms. News reports have a Border Patrol agent was found passed out, drunk, and covered in vomit in a vehicle. And ICE personnel apparently stole a child's phone and sold it for cash. It's an embarrassment, and DHS's so-called leadership should be ashamed, if only they had any shame. Secretary Noem, Department of Homeland Security, has the blood of American citizens on its hand, but she takes no responsibility for anything. To the contrary, Secretary Noem was last seen in this committee room hiding behind her family in a desperate attempt to distract from her department's failures and abuses. Then she ran from our questions, leaving early under the guise of needing to attend a meeting that it turns out didn't even exist. Her inexcusable behavior should come as no surprise. She's always been more concerned with photo ops and wardrobe changes than following the law and fulfilling the mission of her department. Since being sworn in, Secretary Nome has enriched herself, abused the power of her office, obstructed congressional oversight, and violated her oath to the Constitution. Donald Trump and Kristi Noem are doing real damage to this country and to the department that was stood up 25 years ago in the wake of 9/11 to protect American citizens from future attacks. Secretary Noem is a liar with no concern for the lives of Americans killed by the department she runs. She must go. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Other members of the committee are reminded that opening statements may be submitted for the record. I would now like to formally introduce our witnesses. First is Mr. Rodney Scott. Mr. Scott is Commissioner of U.S. Customs and Border Protection. After decades of service at CBP, including a stint as Chief Border Patrol, he has served as a Senate-confirmed Commissioner since June of 2025. Second is Mr. Joseph Edlow. Mr. Edlow is Director of Citizenship and Immigration Services. Director Edlow has served in numerous legal roles across executive branch and Congress, including Chief Counsel to USCIS. Mr. Edlow has served as a Senate-confirmed Director since July 2025. Third is Mr. Todd Lyons. Mr. Lyons is the Acting Director of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Acting Director Lyons began his federal service in the U.S. Air Force in 1993 and joined ICE as an agent in 2007. Mr. Lyons moved up the ranks and has served as Acting Director since March of 2025. Thank all the witnesses for being here today. Pursuant to Committee Rule 8C, I ask that the witnesses please rise and raise their right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you will give before the Committee on Homeland Security of the United States House of Representatives will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that the witnesses have answered in the affirmative. Thank you, and please be seated. I now recognize Commissioner Scott for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear here before you today. I'm honored to represent more than 67,000 dedicated men and women of U.S. Customs and Border Protection who are tirelessly protecting this great nation every single day by simply trying to make sure we know who and what is entering our homeland. Border security is national security. Law enforcement personnel that selflessly provide this service to America increasingly perform under difficult conditions and intense public and political scrutiny. But these brave men and women deserve our gratitude and thanks. It's my privilege to be here today joining my colleagues from Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Citizenship and Immigration Services. Our agencies work in partnership to secure the homeland and uphold the integrity of our immigration system. CBP has spent the last year rebuilding what was an intentionally broken border. As I informed Congress in 2021 and again in 2023, the open border policies of the Biden administration all but eliminated any meaningful border along this, and it replaced it with a porous geographic line defined by record-high encounters with illegal aliens, overwhelmed facilities, and a workforce that was stretched so far beyond their capabilities that hostile nations and the cartels exploited our border at will. That all changed on January 20th, 2025, under the leadership of President Trump. We have now implemented effective policies, established unified priorities and objectives across all federal departments, and empowered our workforce to do their jobs by simply enforcing the laws that already exist. We have imposed consequences for those who break our laws, the laws that this body enacted. And today, the United States, because of these efforts, enjoys the most secure border in our nation's history. But this progress did not happen by accident. It's a result of a comprehensive approach to border security. We ended catch and release, we prioritized detention and removal authorities, and we sent a clear message that illegal entry into the United States will not be tolerated. And the numbers speak for themselves. We have achieved record low illegal crossings between ports of entry. Border Patrol apprehensions along the southwest border totaled over 90,000 for the entire year. That's a number that used to represent a single month under the Biden administration. Daily encounters have dropped by 95%, averaging about 250 per day, compared to 5,000 a day during the Biden administration. Our increased enforcement also resulted in the seizure of over 617,000 pounds of illicit narcotics. That's nationwide, an 8% increase over the prior year. This included nearly 11,000 pounds of fentanyl and more than 186,000 pounds of methamphetamines. This is what having a secure border looks like. None of this would have been possible, though, without the vision and leadership of President Trump and the historic investments made in border security. The One Big Beautiful Bill, a $65 billion investment, is enabling CBP to modernize border infrastructure, deploy additional advanced technology, and to grow our workforce. Since January 2025, CBP is building smart wall at record levels. We're installing high-tech attributes where the Biden administration had shut it off. We're installing water barriers along the Rio Grande River, which denies criminals access to these routes. But that is not all. We're investing in technology at our ports of entry, non-intrusive inspection equipment, biometrics, and advanced surveillance to improve our ability to know what's coming into this country, the land, air, and sea, at and between the ports of entry. CBP's workforce is without a doubt the greatest asset that we have. The One Big Beautiful Bill is investing historic amounts of money in recruitment, hiring, and retention and training to ensure that we have the most highly qualified and capable law enforcement professionals securing our border. Due to the collaboration across all federal departments, the resultant record low encounters, CBP has been able to surge resources to support ICE's targeted enforcement operations across the nation. CBP is integrated with ICE and other partners to identify and remove dangerous criminals and others who remain in the country illegally. As recent events have demonstrated, though, our officers and agents are increasingly facing an unprecedented level of aggressive interference and intimidation when executing the laws that you have asked them to enforce. These attacks on federal law enforcement personnel are coordinated and well-funded. This is not peaceful protest. No law enforcement officer should be put at personal risk simply for doing the job that we have asked them to do. I thank you for your continued support of CBP's mission, and I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you, Commissioner. I now recognize Director Edlow for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, and members of the committee, it is an honor to speak to you about the priorities and progress of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I'm grateful for your partnership as we work together to uphold the rule of law, protect our citizens, and safeguard our homeland. Let me begin by expressing my appreciation to President Trump for his trust in me and to Secretary Noem for her leadership at the Department of Homeland Security. I'm proud to serve alongside a workforce that's deeply committed to advancing the President's agenda, protecting our communities, and restoring integrity to America's legal immigration system. As Director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, my vision has been straightforward and clear. Restore accountability to our immigration system and ensure that it serves the interests of the American people first and foremost. Today, I want to highlight some of our most significant accomplishments: ending the exploitation of immigration programs, putting American workers first, protecting our communities from public safety threats, protecting national security, and combating immigration fraud. Fraud isn't just a paperwork issue. It's a national security and public safety concern. Often those who wish to do us harm exploit weaknesses in our system. Over the past year, USCIS has made nearly 33,000 fraud referrals to law enforcement, a 138% increase over previous years. We conducted thousands of site visits to homes and workplaces and thousands of social media checks to ensure aliens aren't espousing anti-American sentiment. Moreover, our fraud detection and national security team completed over 21,000 investigations, identifying fraud in approximately 65% of those cases. In Operation Twin Shield in Minneapolis-St. Paul back in the fall, we uncovered marriage fraud, visa misuse, and student visa abuses, leading to denials of immigration benefits, arrests, and removal proceedings. This work led to Operation Paris, where we continue re-examining thousands of refugee cases in Minnesota, conducting thorough background checks and in-person reviews. We've also strengthened our vetting policies. If someone falsely claims U.S. citizenship to get a public benefit or try to vote, we hold them accountable through denial of citizenship or loss of immigration status. We've tightened screening to determine whether claimed marriages and family relationships are legitimate. And we've changed regulations to employment authorization is no longer automatically extended. Now we require more frequent renewals so that we can vet aliens more frequently and ensure that they deserve to remain in the country. Additionally, we've taken action to end the exploitation of immigration programs. Mass humanitarian parole programs were being abused by the prior administration. So we've restored them to Congress's original intent, allowing those benefits on a case-by-case basis. Secretary Noem also ended decades of temporary protected status for several countries, returning the program to what Congress intended: temporary protection, not permanent status in the United States. Moreover, this administration is doing more to ensure the integrity of our elections. We enhanced the SAVE program so states can verify citizenship of those on their voter rolls more effectively. Since January 2025, we've processed over 58 million queries, and 27 states are participating. Additionally, federal agencies ran nearly 206 million SAVE queries last year to identify fraud and preserve public assistance benefits for lawful U.S. residents and citizens. We're also putting American taxpayers and communities and workers first. We affirmed that aliens should be self-reliant, not dependent on public assistance, and that their sponsors are liable for the cost of public benefits that they access. The Department of Homeland Security is also working to rescind the 2022 public charge rule, restoring our discretion to determine if an alien will rely on government assistance. We've proposed protecting American jobs by prioritizing H-1B visas for higher skilled, higher paid workers so that companies can't use those visas merely as a way to get cheaper non-citizen labor. We've also streamlined agricultural visa processing to better support American farmers. A major milestone was implementing the One Big Beautiful Bill, which added new fees for certain immigration processes. USCIS collects those fees, but only retains a small amount of the money, while the rest goes to other agencies and deficit reduction. Finally, protecting the American people is at the heart of everything we do. After the attack on 2 brave service members of the National Guard last November, Secretary Noem directed us to review immigration benefits for aliens from high-risk countries. In closing, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is restoring integrity, accountability, and security to America's legal immigration system. These accomplishments reflect the dedication of our workforce and the transformative leadership of President Trump and Secretary Noem, both of whom have allowed USCIS to do the job it was created by Congress to do. We stand ready to continue working with Congress to protect the homeland and uphold the rule of law. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Director Udlow. I now recognize Acting Director Lyons for 5 minutes to summarize his opening statement.
Good morning. Chairman Garbarino, Ranking Member Thompson, distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the invitation to discuss the critical work U.S. Immigration and Customs is doing every day to carry out President Trump's agenda, to keep America safe, restore order to our communities, and return the rule of law to this country. Under the leadership of President Trump and DHS Secretary Kristi Noem, the men and women of ICE have been empowered to do exactly what they're trained to do: arrest and remove illegal aliens and criminals from our communities. We are enhancing public safety, securing our national security, and finally restoring integrity to the immigration system that had been allowed to collapse. We have supercharged our partnerships with state and local law enforcement, empowering officers around the country through the 287G program to help ICE identify and remove criminal aliens. Those partnerships have increased more than 900% since President Trump took office, and our communities are safer for it. I am also proud of our agency's unprecedented hiring campaign that led to hiring of more than 12,000 officers and special agents in less than a year, and more than 222,000 individuals submitted applications. This expansion of a well-trained and well-vetted workforce will help further ICE's abilities to execute President's and Secretary's bold agenda. Before discussing our broader operations, I must address the situation in Minnesota's abilities to execute President's and Secretary's bold agenda. Before discussing our broader operations, I must address the situation in Minnesota and the dangers that ICE agents and officers face nationwide. While the investigations remain ongoing, I'm encouraged that some Minnesota officials are finally signaling the willingness to cooperate with ICE. But let me be clear, promises are not enough. We need action. In the wake of the unprecedented border crisis of the previous administration, ICE has stepped into the breach to enforce the law. This commitment has a cost. We are facing the deadliest operating environment in our agency's history. In fiscal year 2025, death threats against ICE personnel increased more than 8,000%. Assaults on officers have skyrocketed over 1,400%. One officer in Minnesota had his finger bitten off by a protester, egged on by elected officials characterizing our offices as the Gestapo of secret police. The families of ICE personnel have been made to feel unsafe in their homes. I know this firsthand because my own family was targeted. But let me send a message to anyone who thinks they can intimidate us. You will fail. Despite these perils, our officers continue to execute their mission with unwavering resolve, and we are only getting started. ICE remains committed to the fundamental principles that those who illegally enter our country must be held accountable. Since the beginning of the second Trump administration, we have achieved historic results. From January 20th, 2025 through January 20th, 2026, ICE has conducted nearly 379,000 arrests. Among those arrests were more than 7,000 suspected gang members and over 1,400 known as suspected terrorists. The president tasked us with mass deportation, and we are fulfilling that mandate. Thanks to the resources provided by this Congress, we are ramping up detention capabilities and removal flights daily. In the last year alone, we conducted over 475,000 removals. It's a brutal reality that criminal immigration today is organized by sophisticated, ruthless, transnational criminal organizations. These include cartels and transnational gangs President Trump has rightly designated as foreign terrorist organizations. The only way to defeat them is to destroy their revenue. Within Homeland Security investigations, our special agents are delivering critical outcomes in the fight against transnational crime. We are seizing fentanyl before it kills our children and dismantling the networks that poison our communities. In FY25 alone, we seized more than 2.5 million pounds of narcotics, a 50% increase from the previous year and a critical blow to transnational organization groups everywhere. HSI criminal arrests are at the highest point in history. However, our approach is just not about enforcement. It is about restoring order and dignity to the human beings sold alive by smugglers and exploited by these TCOs. In August 2024, the DHS Office of Inspector General released a report that concluded that more than 291,000 unaccompanied alien children out of nearly 450,000 transferred from DHS to HHS custody were simply lost by the system. We are talking about children exploited in factories, abused in sexual trades, and living as indentured servants on American soil. HSI is leading the charge to find them. We have conducted more than 71,000 field engagements to locate children, verify sponsor legitimacy, and uncover criminal activity related to exploitation. Since February 2025, ICE has arrested more than 500 criminal sponsors of these offenses, including sexual exploitation and forced labor, dismantled more than 2,400 human smuggling operations, and along with our federal partners, located more than 145,000 children. To further ensure TCOs can never threaten our nation again, President Trump dedicated the establishment of the Homeland Security Task Force. The Homeland Security Task Forces represent the most aggressive and coordinated attack on TCOs in history. Through Cross-Border Financial Crime Center, we have developed and implemented a strategy to combat rampant fraud, including government programs in Minnesota and across the country. Using this strategy, HSI has opened numerous criminal investigations into the complex fraud systems that have resulted in the thefts of billions. Much of the fight ICE faces continue to be fueled by so-called sanctuary cities. These jurisdictions provided a shield for criminal aliens when a local jail refuses to honor ICE detainer and releases that predator back into the community. ICE exists to enforce America's longstanding immigration and custom laws. These laws are grounded in common sense, national sovereignty, and simple morality. Our officers and agents enforce these without hesitation, without apology. I ask that all the members of the committee treat them with profound respect that they have earned. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Director Lyons. Members will be recognized by order of seniority for their 5 minutes of questioning. As we have when Secretary Noem was here, we're going to limit it to the 5-minute rule. I'm going to be strict on that for both sides. So do not be surprised if you go over, I gavel you down. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes of questions. Acting Director Lyons, I understand that you cannot discuss the details of the 2 recent shootings in Minnesota because they are subject of several investigations, including by the FBI, the Department of Homeland Security, and the DOJ Civil Rights Division. Once concluded, will you commit to providing the reports and findings of each investigation to this committee?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we're fully committed to give you the full and unabridged investigation and the outcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Scott, can the committee have the same commitment from you?
Yes, sir.
Thank you both. Commissioner Scott and Acting Director Lyons, following this hearing in writing, I'd like to know what is the standard operating procedure for each of your agencies for an investigation when deadly force is used. Currently, Acting Director Lyons, are those procedures being followed for the 2 uses of deadly force in Minneapolis this past January?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Were those, and Commissioner Scott,
Yes, sir, they are.
were the standard procedures followed from the beginning? Mr. Lyons?
Yes, sir, they were.
Mr. Scott?
Yes, for CBP, they were as well.
Thank you very much. We're obviously concerned about officer safety and have seen and heard about increasing threats and assaults against law enforcement. Director Lyons, are your officers trained regarding the difference between a protected protest and what is unlawfully impeding law enforcement?
Yes, sir. Deportation officers and special agents are taught at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. They are taught in defensive tactics, personal safety, but as well as laws to include First, Second, Fourth, Fifth, 10th, 14th Amendment. The officers are trained before they go out into the field, and then while they're in the field. They are specialized training in disturbance control and other special tactics.
Commissioner Scott, are your officers similarly trained?
Yes, they are. At FLETC, ongoing training in the field, and then anytime we're deploying them to the interior, they get updated law refresher training to include First Amendment and Fourth Amendment.
So I want to focus on the training here because with the historic investment in both ICE and CBP, there was a surge in hiring. I need to know, for these new hires, is the training different than what other agents and officers received before the hiring surge? Mr. Lyons, I'll let you start there.
No, sir, it's not. The training was never, the meat of the training was never removed. The timeline was. We took training from 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, to 6 days a week, 12 hours a day. In addition to that, training is different in the fact that before officers even go to the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy, there's pre-employment training, which we never had before. And on top of that, we've adapted our on-the-job training program, which is much like a city or state field training officer program that once they are removed from the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy, have graduated, before they return to their field offices, they're assigned a field training officer, and that's continued on after that.
So let me get this go. For ICE officers, the curriculum has stayed the same, but it's now a quicker training. The timeline has moved up?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, but the curriculum is the same.
Yes, sir.
All right. Commissioner Scott, can you talk about if there's been a change in training since the hiring surge?
There's been no change in the training within Customs and Border Protection. Border Patrol agents go through a 117-day academy. The CBP officers go through a 103-day academy. That's actually training days. There's been no changes to that.
So
The only change that has been made is in our quarterly training. We've added scenarios based on what we most likely think they will encounter in the field. So we've actually added some of the protest type encounters as well.
So there's been no change in the timeline either. Similar, ICE did that. You did not.
No, we did not.
Okay. And while this is nothing, well, because this is my last question, I'm sure. While understanding they are not suitable for every occasion, there's been a lot of talk about the use of deadly force. Are agents and officers equipped with and trained in the use of tasers or other less lethal alternatives to avoid the use of deadly force? And Mr. Director Lyons, I'll start with you, and then Mrs. Scott, you can finish.
Yes, sir. Every deportation officer, special agent are trained in secondary weapons, which include the taser, OC spray, and baton.
They're
And
trained
those are made available.
and they're equipped.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Scott?
It's a similar answer that all of our agents have to carry a secondary weapon. They train at the academy, and then they go through quarterly refresher training every 3 months.
Okay, I appreciate it. I will have, I'm sure, for some follow-up questions today, and I will submit those to you in writing. But with that, I yield back, and I now recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Lyons, how many ICE agents have cameras as of today?
Sir, as of today, more than 3,000 ICE officers have cameras that are active in the field, with another 6,000 being deployed, sir.
So how many in the field? How many ICE agents are in the field as of today?
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Agents in the field today?
You said agents in the field. I'm just trying to get the number of ICE agents who have cameras on their body as of today.
Approximately 3,000, sir.
3,000 out of how many?
Out of approximately 13,000, sir, that are in the field.
So you have 3,000 out of 13,000 who have cameras.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Scott?
I don't have the actual number in front of me right now. It's about 10,000. We're building that program out as we speak.
10,000 out of how many?
Out of about 67,000. But the
Out
catch
of-
there
out
is
of-
the ports of entry, we have significant video.
Nope. I don't want to go to ports of entry. I just want to know how many cameras right now do you have on your agents?
When you say agents, Border Patrol agents, there's about 10,000.
10,000
That's an estimate,
out, 10,000 out of how many?
Out of 20,000 Border Patrol agents.
So half of them.
Approximately, yes.
So I'll give you a chance to look at that, since you said approximately, and get back to the committee on what's the accurate number. Not how many you're purchasing, how many as of this day.
Understood, and I will get you that number.
Thank you. Mr. Lyons, what's the regular timetable of training an ICE agent?
Sorry about that, sir. Right now, the training is approximately 47 days at the Federal Law Enforcement Academy. Overall training is about 3 months, sir.
So you went from 3 months to 47 days.
No, sir, the whole total training to include the pre-employment training and then the OJT program is 3 months. And 47 days in the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy.
So they go to Flexi for 47 days or for 3 months?
No, sir, you asked for the total training time. The total training time now is a combined 3 months, sir, with 47 days at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Academy.
So you didn't reduce the timeline for any of the ICE agents to come on board?
We reduced the timeline for the previous certified federal law enforcement officers or special agents, where we went to the ones who are already trained in firearms and defensive tactics and criminal procedure. We adapted to a shorter program so they would just have the extensive Immigration Nationality Act training, immigration law, and ICE-specific training.
So if you hired somebody for ICE today, how much training would they receive before they become a full-time agent?
So for a person off the street who has never been a law enforcement officer, they're looking at approximately 3 months of training, sir.
And the 47 days is for who?
That is for everyone that hasn't, who's never worked for ICE, sir. So you could have someone that's a Capitol Police officer. They would not have to go through extended training for when it comes to defensive tactics, firearms, et cetera. They would have to go through the rigorous immigration training, which unfortunately immigration law is just as confusing and long as tax code, which we have to ensure that we devote that extensive time to.
Thank you so much. But
Yes, sir.
would you provide the committee with the timeline?
Yes, sir. We will provide you.
Some of us understand it's 47 days.
Yes, sir. We will
But
provide
you're
you
telling us it's 3 months.
from the beginning, sir, when they go ahead and come on pre-employment training to the
Thank
OJT program afterwards. But we will provide the committee with the full for
Okay.
each breakdown.
For Mr. Lyons and Mr. Scott, over the past several weeks, the president has made a series of comments regarding the midterm election. The president has urged my Republican colleagues in Congress to nationalize elections. Now, are you involved in any planning on guarding precincts in this country as of today? Mr. Scott?
No, sir.
Mr. Lyons?
No, sir.
So there's no information, you've not been asked to start deploying people for areas anywhere?
No, sir.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Lyons, I'll get it in writing, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to follow your directions on that.
Gentleman yields back. Thank you, Ranking Member. I now recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. McCall, for 5 minutes of questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A decade ago when I chaired this committee, Mr. Thompson and I passed a bill to authorize ICE into law. It was a bipartisan effort. It passed the House overwhelmingly, both Republican and Democrat. A decade later, here we are. The Dems have called to abolish ICE. Now they're trying to shut it down. So what has happened in that 10 years? Let's go back to the last 4 to 5 years. What happened in this country and at the border? As someone who lives in a border state of Texas, we saw the most dangerous, wide open border that I've seen in my 22 years in Congress. 10 to 12 million people, and that's what we know about. I think it's far greater, came into this country. Many of them dangerous, violent criminals, some known or suspected terrorists, which I find extremely dangerous. That's why I served as an impeachment manager for Mayorkas, because he violated federal law. The federal statute says, as a former federal prosecutor, I know this, shall detain aggravated felons. What did Mayorkas do? He told his agents, that's discretionary. You can release them. As a result, we had tens of thousands of aggravated felons left on the streets of America to roam freely, not to mention the human and sex trafficking of children, Mr. Lyons, as you pointed out. So what is the administration trying to do? They're trying to remove a public safety threat from the United States of America. That is their job. Restoring public safety should be the number one priority. And one of the problems here, as I examine it, is that Minnesota, Minneapolis in particular, is a sanctuary city. What does that mean? That means that it's a magnet for illegal. They're protected under the current situation because state and locals will not cooperate with federal law enforcement. In fact, Mr. Lyons, is it not true that they were not honoring ICE detainers that were put on dangerous felons in prison so that you could remove them from the United States?
That is correct, sir. The detainers were not honored at the local level in Minneapolis.
This is the number one violation. In addition, the rhetoric on the left led to over 1,000% increase in assaults on ICE officers, an increase of over 8,000 of death threats to them. All this created a perfect storm for our officers being thrown into this situation. And then Agent Bovino came into the picture, and I would argue, in fairness, that he escalated the situation by the way that was handled. Your officers are not trained to effectuate crowd control. They are trained to move in surgically, go in and remove these dangerous, violent criminals from the United States of America. I've called for de-escalation after the two deaths, the two shootings that took place. I believe that these roving patrols should be done at the border rather than in the major cities of the United States. So when the president decided to remove Agent Bovino and put in Tom Homan, who I've known for years, a consummate professional, law enforcement professional, I commended the president. And what has been done since Mr. Homan came into the job? We now have targeted law enforcement operations. He is returning to the original mission of ICE. He is working with state and locals to do the crowd control. He is getting them to honor the ICE detainers. He is also getting the body cameras put on them. And the roving patrols, in his words to me, should be done at the border, not in major cities. My question to you, Mr. Lyons, is Mr. Homan now, are his operations in Minneapolis now bringing the situation under control?
So we've seen a de-escalation in the fact that the protests, while they still go on, have subsided, and ICE has been allowed to do their targeted, intelligence-driven enforcement operation. Just the other night, local authorities arrested 54 protesters at the local level where ICE officers did not have to be engaged in that.
My final question to you, do you believe the model that Mr. Homan is now setting in Minneapolis should be a model for the nation?
Gentleman's time is
If
expired.
I could allow the witness to answer.
I understand that, but I'm holding.
I'd
it
like
to
on the
5 minutes.
record an answer, Mr. Chairman. Do you agree that Mr. Homan's model is one for the nation?
Gentleman's time is expired.
Yes or no?
I now recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell, for 5 minutes.
A couple nights ago, I met with a woman who works as a cashier at a grocery store, and I told her I was coming to see you, Mr. Lyons, and she said, will you ask him, and she didn't want to give her name. She was terrified to give her name. But she said, when I get off my shift around midnight and I walk through the parking lot to my car, she said, if somebody rolls up in an unidentified van and gets out wearing all black and their face is covered and they don't have any identification and they ask me to get into the van, how do I know who they are? How does she know, Mr. Lyons? How does she know if they're an ICE agent or bad guys?
Sir, ICE agents have identifiable placards on their uniforms as well as their badges representative, but you won't see ICE agents rolling through the parking lots and just snatching someone up. ICE does intelligence-driven, targeted enforcement operations.
Well, Mr. Homan and others have said that they target individuals based on the color of their skin and the accents that they speak, and that's why people are running through the fields and factories where they work. Director Lyons, last year you said in Phoenix at the Border Security Expo that you wanted to see a deportation process that was like, quote, Amazon Prime, but with human beings. Mr. Lyons, how many times has Amazon Prime shot a mom 3 times in the face?
None, sir, but you're also...
It's the square root of 0, that's right.
Yes, sir. Yeah, but if we're going to go down that route of my comment, I did say that comment. However, that comment was taken out. If you go back and watch the video, I did say that we need to be more efficient when it comes to removing individuals from the United States because ICE doesn't detain punitively. We detain to remove. I don't want to see people in custody. At the end of my statement was, and again, to your point, it was a industry day for AI and efficiencies, but I did say at the end of it, but we deal with human beings, so we can't be like them.
And speaking
That's
of
the
human-
key part that you're leaving out.
Well, speaking of human beings, how many times has Amazon Prime shot a nurse 10 times in the back?
None.
How many times has Amazon Prime dragged a woman out of her car by her hair and then dragged her down the street?
None.
How many ICE agents have been fired for their conduct under your leadership?
Sir, I can get you that data. I'll get that back to you.
Is it more than 1?
I'm not going to speak about personnel actions, but I'll get you that data.
Can you tell us if at least, God, I hope at least 1 person has been fired for their conduct since these operations have begun? Are you telling us you can't even say 1 person's been fired?
Sir, I'm not going to talk about personnel actions, but we will get back to you.
But 2 people have been killed so far, is that right? A nurse named Preddy and a mom named Good. 2 people have been killed so far.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Lyons, will you apologize to the family of Renee Good for being called a domestic terrorist by the president and his leadership?
No, sir.
Why not?
Sir, I welcome the opportunity to speak to the family in private, but I'm not going to comment on any active investigation.
Is she a domestic terrorist?
Sir, I'm not going to comment on the investigation, and the president and Secretary Noem are elected officials. That's their right to their comments, but as career law enforcement, we won't speak to any.
Do you agree with their comments?
Sir, I'm not going to go ahead and talk about any ongoing investigation.
Will you apologize to the family of Alex Preddy for also being called a domestic terrorist?
Sir, again, I'm not going to speak to any ongoing investigation.
Mr. Lyons, your staying to lead ICE is a decision.
Sir, I'm sorry. Could you repeat
Your
that?
staying on to lead ICE is a decision. And I've read your background. You have a decorated career. You've served in the military. You are what I would call otherwise employable. I think most people would agree this is not the only job that you can get. But since you've been on this job, women have been dragged by their hair through our streets. A 6-year-old child battling stage 4 cancer has been deported, and it turns out he was a U.S. citizen. People are running through the fields where they work. People who've gone to the streets as allies have been shot and publicly executed. It's a decision to stay on at this point. And considering your honorable service in the past and the dishonorable acts that those who have worked for you have conducted, and the disgraceful statements that the leadership above you have said, you now have a decision. Will you stand with the kids who you're supposed to protect, or will you side with the killers bringing terror to our streets? Mr. Lyons, will you resign from ICE?
No, sir, I won't.
Why not?
Because, sir, that child that you're showing right there, the men and women of ICE took care of him when his father abandoned him and ran from
Gentleman's
law enforcement.
time has expired.
You never should have gone into
Gentleman's time
custody.
has expired. I recognize the gentleman from Mississippi. Mr. Guest for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we stand on the verge of a second Democrat shutdown of the United States Department of Homeland Security just within the last 90 days. The Department of Homeland Security employs 260,000 men and women across 22 different agencies. Those agencies include 63,000 men and women who work for CBP, 60,000 who work for TSA, 22,000 for FEMA, 18,000 who works for USCIS, almost 50,000 civilian and military employees with the United States Coast Guard, 7,800 Secret Service employees, 2,500 CISA employees, and over 8,000 agents and analysts with the Department of Homeland Security investigation who perform a crucial function to protect and serve this country. This second government shutdown, led by my friends on the Democrat side of the aisle, will leave our country less safe. Don't just take my word for it. Let's look at the words of the Biden administration. President Biden and Kamala Harris, Department of Homeland Security, in September of 2023, as the nation faced a potential government shutdown, they issued a fact sheet. That fact sheet is entitled "The Impact of Government Shutdown on the DHS Workforce." This fact sheet says this. It says DHS workforce is comprised of extraordinary public servants who safeguard this nation. It goes on to say any lapse in federal funding would disrupt this vital work, leaving Americans less safe as a result. Those working without pay include law enforcement, conducting such acts as seizing illegal narcotics like fentanyl, combating child exploitation and child predators, identifying and arresting human trafficking, responding to natural disasters, preventing cyber attacks, and protecting U.S. government leaders. And so I ask you, gentlemen, as we are once again on the verge of a shutdown of the Department of Homeland Security, if the Democrats take us to the edge, if they refuse to sign a CR, if once again the men and women who serve under your leadership, if they are once again not paid, I ask you, how will that impact our nation? Will America be more safe, or will America be less safe if we are once again led into a government shutdown by the Democrat Party? Mr. Scott.
I believe consistency and seeing support from the leadership of, on both sides of this building and the president is very important to border security. I think the rhetoric and the back and forth, the politicizing of law enforcement in general detracts from the general morale of our personnel.
Is it not important that we pay the men and women who serve under your command?
It's critically important.
And in a government shutdown, the bills don't stop, do they not? The bills continue to accrue.
Correct.
And the deployment of technology ceases in many cases, and America becomes less safe. Would you agree with that statement?
I would agree America becomes less safe.
Mr. Edlow, what about you?
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you're aware, USCIS is a little different in that we are fee-funded, so during a shutdown, the men and women working for USCIS will continue to be paid. However, in terms of our screening and vetting enterprises, as well as everything else we do, we form